The psychic structure of human. After you know all the basic parts of the human being, you are ready to put those parts together. While Sigmund Freud at the beginning of the 20th century divided the human psyche into an I, an ego and a superego, we compare it to an iceberg in this picture. Not because an iceberg consists largely of water, just like human being, but simply because an iceberg offers so many parallels to understanding the levels of human psyche. Perhaps you have already noticed when discussing the higher programs that the more complex the layers of the psyche become, the better they can be described symbolically. Surely you know that an iceberg is not only made of frozen water, but also swims in it. This water around him represents the aspect of the unconscious. Even if this part of human existence may still seem strange to you, at the beginning of modern times the philosopher Descartes thought about something that he called ether, a kind of an universal medium, an ether as the basis of everything else. This term dates back to the time of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. After Albert Einstein defined the ether again in the beginning of the 20th century, it is still used today in quantum physics. Also, the morphogenetic field, defined by the biologist Rupert Sheldrake, describes phenomena that the Swiss psychologist C.G. Jung a few decades earlier described as collective consciousness. How you currently define the water, or rather the unconscious, for yourself, does not play a role for this time being when looking at the iceberg. This is still an extremely abstract and sometimes incomprehensible term. It can only be experienced personally with the help of experience and observation. And since you want to understand, not believe, the exercises in part 3 are much better suited for understanding than the comparison with an iceberg. Instead, devote yourself to a part in this presentation, the individual part of which you already know very well, the subconscious. By comparing the iceberg, classify all parts of the conscious and subconscious. As the name suggests, the subconscious is below the surface of the water, while the conscious is above it. Surely you know the saying, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Only this tip is visible, and most of the iceberg is hidden under the water surface. Just like him, only a small part of the human psyche is immediately visible. It's his action, it's his behavior. Behavior is determined by consciousness, as people become aware of more and more things over the course of their lives. It gets bigger and bigger over time, and ideally, and with a little practice, ultimately by providing a context, it becomes the boss. All subconscious processes usually remain hidden under the water surface. Below there is the largest part of the iceberg. If we look at it more closely, we see that it consists of layers that build on another. The deepest layer in the subconscious contains the blueprint of the body, plus all the functions that keep the body alive, develop it, repair it, and control its inner environment. They form the basic survival functions defined by the body. This layer knows exactly what to do to heal the body should it be injured or ill. All organic systems are kept in balance here, and the body's function is ensured. Above this first deep layer are the basic functions to which the lower programs can be classified. You will recall that these basic programs are largely dependent on physical ability, determined by the function of the body. Above the basic function is a layer that many people would define as instincts. They are based on the subconscious and dissociated memory within the basic programs. Here you will find all the information that the organism has ever absorbed in the course of its life. This area also contains the feelings stored about a situation. On this basis, decisions are made and connections are recognized that are so deep and hidden that we call them instinctive feelings. Of course, this layer is also directly concerned with ensuring the body's survival. Now we come to another area within the subconscious. A part of it are the basic needs. They are initially based on the body's needs to consume energy or food and liquid, because the most basic need is that of the survival of the body. This is signaled by the feelings of a balanced, pain-free, healthy body. You remember, feelings are tightly connected to the body, since every emotion is made up of a special mix of hormones and peptides, and emotions take a while to develop. As a rule, these then spread throughout the body. If you want to work with and on with these layers of your psyche, the path does not lead past your feelings. Feelings can also take you back to situations and remind you of things you thought you had long forgotten. In this case, you access the linked contents of your subconscious memory through your feelings. Not only direct physical basic needs are represented by this quite deep part of your psyche. The first psychic strategic needs are also at home here. Every human being has a strong desire to exist as a human being, not only physically but also mentally. He wants to create an identity that allows him to distinguish himself from others, so that in extreme cases he can be responsible for his own survival. Being able to detach yourself from a group and go your own way, if necessary, requires your own identity. At the same time, however, he wants to feel connected because he has learned that together there is a much better chance of surviving. And of course, humans have the urge to change something in order to ensure survival. Only if he can influence and change his environment can he make it less dangerous and safer. If one of these three basic psychological needs is temporarily completely suppressed, a trauma develops. In this case, the subconscious stores dissociated parts of the incoming sensory impressions and will only try to integrate them later. This is a protective function because in such situations survival is questionable and such a situation offers no real option, no possible future. Together with the disposition of the body, its size, the physics, its weaknesses, its strengths and so on, the basic needs form the foundation for the original personality. Here it is determined what the individual person needs in his life, what he should experience and in which direction he should develop. Whether a soul or an unconscious plays a role at this point is again not important in this case. Should you later feel a connection to your unconscious, you can assume that at this point it is quite possible to discover the higher component of the unconscious. Over time, more and more complex needs develop from the basic needs. They are closely related to the increasingly complex strategies, values and beliefs that people develop over the course of their lives. All desire stems from the three basic psychic needs: identity, connectedness and potency. Here is a realm of the higher programs. Here is stored what a person thinks he has for abilities, what it allowed, what he should do, and so on. As you already know, this area is strongly influenced by the human environment. Here is a mobile of belief and value systems which determines his action. Ideally, the values and belief systems from this area should go hand in hand with the basic personality, for the body requires the satisfaction of basic needs in order to survive. The physical needs are easy to understand, but the psychological needs are also vital to survival. They have the potential to chemically unbalance the body and, for example, make it constantly work in fight or flight mode. That this damages the body in the long term is easy to understand, even without the background of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The body also needs to rest. Unfortunately, in practice it is usually not the case that these two areas of subconscious play together optimally. Too much information enters the human psychic system via the five senses. Once again, it becomes clear how important it becomes with increasing age to increase consciousness and to become more and more aware of connections. If this does not happen, and if the original needs of a person are not satisfied for a long time, or if they are even counteracted by the higher strategies, this person becomes dissatisfied. He wants to defend himself, but does not consciously know how to defend himself, because we are still in the subconscious. If he had conscious perception, he could easily identify which belief, which behavior is directed against his original personality. So, what else can he do but get angry and develop an undirected aggression against his environment? Now, there are people from whom even aggressive behavior is not possible due to their beliefs. Such people have not been able to learn from their childhood how to deal with aggressiveness in a meaningful way. If a person does not have the opportunity to react aggressively in such a case, he will become afraid. Fundamental fear of the future because he cannot find a solution for the imbalance of his system. As with aggression, fear has the ability to spread throughout the human psyche. More and more situations and things are becoming scary. This downward spiral then ends in anger at oneself and/or fear of oneself. If these fears are not faced, the subconscious system makes a decision. It cannot go on like this. The organism is now prevented from going on as before. To do this, its activity must be redirected or throttled, and additional attention must be generated. As a solution, the organism becomes ill. It is not without reason that the word depressive derives from the Latin and means something like depressing. The psyche tries with a sweeping attack to suppress the behavior contrary to the original personality. Thus, the composition of the beliefs and value systems, as well as the stored experiences, determine the ability to master future situations. In the technical jargon of psychologists, we speak of vulnerability. For example, the vulnerability of the entire system. Only above the higher programs is the consciousness filter that has already been mentioned many times. It is only at this point that the transition between water and air, the threshold between the subconscious and the conscious, is reached. You can now understand even better how important it is to give your consciousness filter observation. Only then you can just listen to your inner impulses even better. And you may already be feeling a little better if there are parts of your belief systems that are constantly working against your original personality. In the third part of Mensch 2.0, you can expect exercises to recognize and change these beliefs.